On the 25th of November, 1527, a local preacher in Nienzo, a German province, became the principal figure of a so-called Reformed school of thought, stressing the complete ruin of man's ethical nature. That is to say, man's nature is so overcome by sin that man cannot stop sinning, and therefore salvation comes through God, overriding their sinful nature. This ties into another major Reformed teaching, that of predestination, whereby people are saved or damned by God from the beginning, through no agency or characteristic of their own. The Reformed school also demonstrated unique church practices and competed with both Catholicism and main sect Protestantism. This was yet another testament to the fact that the Protestant Reformation was spreading like wildfire across Europe. Meanwhile, with some spirited rebuilding efforts, Romania regained its spot among the great powers of the world, roughly considered at the fifth most powerful. On the 12th of July, 1528, Crowell Vintilla's regency ended, and he ascended to the throne, noted for his tactical genius, passed down from his father. In 1531, Venice broke free from Wallachia, and Bosnia had maintained its own independence through everything. In April, the Romanian Diplomatic Corps was established by Crowell Vintilla. This body would serve firstly to deliver foreign messages from the Kraal, but later would inform the Kraal on diplomatic decisions via their experience at foreign courts and provide their opinions on matters of foreign interactions. Also, over the years, many efforts had been made to increase the authority of the Patriarch and the Holy Synod, such as the formalization of the Synod and the Crown generally keeping out of church affairs. One such affirmation of the Synod's autonomous authority was the reiteration on the part of the Crown that church lands would not be taxed or otherwise catalogued in the taxed books of the state. As such, the Patriarch's authority at this point had grown significantly, but many priests were not yet satisfied, calling these affirmations a quarter measure of what the Holy Orthodox Church should be seeing. On the 31st of October, the Papal State called Romania into a war against Cortuba for the reconquest of Malia. In truth, the war would be over before any Romanian soldiers would arrive. Meanwhile, to the west, England decided to strive for a more tolerant society in the face of the Reformation, shocking the rest of Catholic Europe. Such a decision came after dozens of smaller towns had experienced violence between the groups involved, and the Crown pragmatically wanted to prevent things from getting out of hand. In 1534, due to armor becoming heavier to resist the arquebus, muskets began to be developed in order to deliver heavier rounds, and thus offer better armor penetration. On the 29th of October, 1534, the Papal State called Romania into war yet again, this time to aid in their conquest of Armeniacan, Anatolican, and Samo, colloquially known as the Greek War. Despite the grandiosity of this goal, Crowell Vintilla thought it prudent to weaken the power that was, for the moment, at the top of the world, and so joined the conflict. Also, in October of that year, a group of Muslim rebels took the opportunity for war and formed the Sharifate of Medina, which held the ancient and ruined cities of Mecca and Medina. They declared the Hajj to be once again a possibility for the Muslims of the world, for the first time in centuries. Meanwhile, Romania began the Greek War by occupying the territories immediately on the border, with the goal of taking Constantinople. However, before they could proceed, the Armeniakites blockaded the port, disallowing Romanian soldiers to cross the Bosporus. The growing Romanian navy, however, was able to dislodge them and facilitate the continuation of the invasion. In 1537, a pretender revolt broke out into civil war in Armeniacan, and 18,000 of these rebels mistakenly attacked 10,000 Romanian soldiers, decimating them. Also, Zaporozhian separatists spilled over the Romanian border from Lithuania in the north, occupying land there. Romania, already doing quite well for itself otherwise, negotiated a peace treaty and left the Greek War to deal with a more pressing threat at home. On the 5th of June, 1540, Crowell Vintilla declared the royal decree. That is, he reiterated and enshrined the absolute and divine power of the Kraal, to be unchallenged and obeyed, for to disobey the Kraal is to disobey the judgment of the Lord himself. This was reinforced by the Holy Synod, which, while not entirely satisfied, still saw his use as a Kraal which would give them what they asked for. On the 29th of September, Pope Johannes VIII called the Council of Trul to address the challenges posed by the Protestant movement. Many changes in the administration of the church would follow to stop absentee bishops and the worldly excesses of the clergy. The sale of indulgences stopped, the doctrine of purgatory was revisited, and the practice of simony was made a true and punishable crime. In addition, several new monastic orders were founded to aid in the efforts of the Counter-Reformation. This was all in response to the fact that a center of Reformation laid in their very territory, in the Italian Alps, which had converted almost the entirety of northern Italy. It took so well there because the people felt so disconnected from their Pope kings, up high in their palatial Roman churches, waving from balconies and draped in silk. Protestantism was presented to the people by their fellow man, and this parallel relationship with their neighbors and with God was the driving force of the movement. Meanwhile, Wallachia passed the Declaration of Indulgence, which was a further codification and expansion of King German's Act of Tolerance. It stressed that all religious sects had the right to public worship, as well as the rights of advancement to military and civil offices. It was a display of religious freedom to the extreme, making it the most liberal policy not just in Europe, but in the entire known world at the time. In contrast, on the 29th of January 1541, the last non-Orthodox province in Romania was converted to the true and holy faith. This was the Bogomilist province of Suceava, to the east of the Carpathian Mountains. For a long time, the people there were unruly, but because they didn't have a border with Wallachia, Romania was, with some effort, able to bring them into the fold eventually. This brought religious unity to its natural maximum, and gave the Holy Orthodox Church free spiritual reign over the entirety of Romania. It was also at this time that the last of the remaining Jewish communities in Romania, mainly in Târgoviște, fled to Wallachia, completing a migration which had been going on for a rather long time at this point. Once in Wallachia, they settled in the major cities and lived most comfortably among the Bogomilists, offering their services and generations of skilled labor to their new communities. On the 24th of December 1542, Crăul Vintila established the Romanian Inquisition to root out any remaining heretics or heathens and to maintain the purity of the unified Orthodox realm. Meanwhile, to the west, Wallachia contained within its borders every sect of Christianity that existed in its day. To the north, spilling over from Italy, lived the newly arrived Protestants. They were mostly minor craftsmen and laborers, representing those who were very recently peasants. The northeast held a great deal of Catholics, as well as northern Greece. The Catholics were farmers by and large, though some were notable landowners. The central area of Wallachia was where the Bogomilist majority lived, as well as the sizable Jewish minority. The Bogomilists were found in every strata of society here, and the Jews made a healthy name for themselves as drivers of the local urban economies. To the far south of Greece, the Massalians made their place, made up of rural mountain farmers and fishing villages. As a result, many Wallachian sailors were either Greek, Massalian, or both. At every harbor, one could see the small effigies of Lucifer, whittled from bone or soapstone in the Greek style, for sale outside the Massalian churches, which also could be found near the waters of any port town. Finally, in the west, bordering the Adriatic, was a single province of Orthodox Christians, which constantly clamored against the Wallachian throne, sheltering zealous rebels and informing on the kingdom to the enemies of it that would listen. As such, the preoccupation of these impoverished people was extreme religious violence, supported by a struggling livestock trade. Meanwhile, in May, 31,000 Protestant zealots rose up in the Papal State and marched on Naples. They were put down in July, but their statement was made, and Europe understood it. Nobody was safe from the throes of religious turmoil. On the 1st of January 1550, the printing press was invented in Germany, and the technology and resultant social change was all-encompassing. Namely, the Reformation, already quite popular, found a second wind through which to spread throughout Christendom and counter the Counter-Reformation. By 1558, the Golden Horde had been chipped away at and worked down to half its size of its initial empire by the Islamic hordes of Nogai, Transoxiana, and a multitude of smaller states that had broken off from them in the past. It seemed truly that they were on a kind of final decline. Armenia Khan was also dealing with their constant aggression, but was dealing with them at least somewhat more efficiently. Seeing the Muslims encroaching northwards on the borders of Europe, Crăul Vintila guaranteed the independence of, and made an alliance with, Perm, far to the north in Arkhangelsk, A sizable realm, and until this time peaceful to the point of sloth, they now bordered the Nogai, and Kralventilla knew that their Orthodox brothers would not be left in peace for much longer. In 1559, Wallachia took advantage of the war in Armeniakan and invaded, annexing western Anatolia with the help of their Anglalisk allies. On the 13th of August, 1560, Alexandru Ilias Basarab I ascended to the throne, well known for his level-headed nature and remarkable leadership skills.